guys, to the NFL portion of the Sunny and G podcast. You know, some things change, some things don't. Mahomes is in the finals again, the Super Bowl. Lamar comes up short when the team needed something. Detroit heartache.
Yeah.
That's tough, man. Crazy comeback on the 49ers part. So, where do you want to start? We'll start off with we got some other coaching vacancies we'll talk about at the end here, but what do you want to start?
I think we start with Detroit.
You want to start with?
Kind of one of the just like, you know, so many people are rooting for this team. Detroit.
So many people rooting that.
Obviously, there's people that like hate San Francisco, hate KC.
Yeah.
I don't think Baltimore is that hated, but still, like, they're looking for that diamond in the rough of a team to win a Super Bowl. And this was like that Cinderella story. Right?
The underdog, right?
Yeah,
like the team that has been shitty for so long. It was like when the Chiefs first won the title in Mahomes, how many teams were cheering for them, right?
Yeah.
How many people were actually on his side, and now he's a villain, just like Brady and all these guys, right? When you win that many titles, man.
They're a villain. 100%.
Right? Where Detroit hadn't even won a playoff game like in 30-something years, hadn't won a road playoff game in like 60-something years. And then all of a sudden...
The unthinkable, and it comes down to the players playing their hearts out. We saw plays that, you know, there was turnovers here and there, both sides, and we saw the lead change, but I think it all came down to those coaching play calls that everybody that watched that game or heard about that game after knows that they were right there. They could have beat San Francisco. They had them in the bag.
Yep.
And it was just a couple of bad calls that gave a lot of fucking confidence to San Francisco.
Man, like, the thing is, Dan Campbell's been aggressive all year, right? You watch his games,
We love him for it.
right? Like, he, you know, but when it comes down to the playoffs, I'm not saying you have to tone down your aggressiveness. I feel like in the playoffs, because now you're down to one situation, right? In the regular season, you've got 17 games worth. When the playoff single elimination, right? It's not like you want to be conservative, but there's also plays where, you know, they had 2 field goal opportunities, man. They should have taken I think they should have taken the first one up for it, right? Then they brought up 17. You know, you're like, how much of a difference is going to make? They just scored on a field goal. You come back and put a field goal on them, the pressure kind of would have changed. The momentum would have still been on your side. You would have caught the field goal. You know, maybe they missed, though, right? Who knows? That could factor into it, too. They're on a 4th and 2, which is something that we've seen them do a lot this year and make it. But you're single elimination, man, right? I think they should have taken the points there. I understand the aggressiveness later in the game too, right? With Mahomes, like Goff going for it, and then the guy dropped it. Yeah. But the thing I hated about that fucking play was, why are you lining up in an empty back set again? Or like, right? You're gonna throw it right away, right? You already know you're gonna throw it.
Running back they could have had back there.
And I understand, like, even if you're not gonna run it because they tried to. And the first play, let's go back to the first play because I'm flopped. You run it with fucking Amon St. Brown. You didn't run it with Gibbs or Montgomery. You ran it with your wide receiver. Then your second 4th down were later in the game. You end up going for a shotgun look, 5 receivers or 4 receivers and a tight end, and the guy dropped it. You know, and then they come back, they scored again. And then mistakes. I think the biggest point was where they had, like, I can't remember the exact order, but I think it was Ayuk had the touchdown. Right?
But remember that one too? The
bounce. He should have been a pick, but then it also should have hit the ground. But then Ayuk catches it and he goes in for the TD. Yeah. So out of the 3 things that could have happened, a pick, the falls there, or it goes back into Ayuk's hands or something, they ends up having the 3rd option, right? They get the touchdown. Then I think Gibbs fumbled it the next play. Yeah. Right? They got the touchdown. Right? They ended up, and then next thing you know, they missed the field goal. They got the touchdown, I think, on the Ayuk play. Yeah. They come back. Gibbs fumbles it. They scored again. And then I think they scored later in the game with McCaffrey. And then it was game over by that point. These guys were shell-shocked. Detroit didn't really do much. I think they had, 24? Was it 21 at halftime and they finished with 24, or was it 21?
They were up 14, right?
They were up 21-7 or 24-17 at half. And then they had
like 14, and we were hoping they'd be up by 17 with that one field goal that they could have.
That was just, man, I'm like, that's just stupidity.
Itching to, like, for the players, because when you get that play call come in your ear, like, you have to do it. You can't just be like, you know what, guys, fuck it, we're gonna, like, especially being Goff. Like, when that comes into you, you can't be like, hey, you know what, like, let's just bring on the field goal, what is it called, line, because that's the whole thing. You got to bring in all those defensive guys, then get the field goal kicking team on it. You there just like, okay, we're fucking going for it, I guess. Okay, must say Brown's gonna fucking run this. Like, you're handing shit off. Like, it's such a, like, thinking for Goff, I think, like, especially being that aggressive kind of like quarterback himself, like, he's a fucking pretty good quarterback himself.
Dude, he turned his career around. I mean, like, the fact of where he was, and he got traded, and then, you know, Stafford won the title with the same team. Obviously, he's not going to be one of those guys where he's even like a top 10 QB. He's an average to good QB at the end of the day, who is playing great for stretches. But the thing with him is that outside of, like, as the game progresses, he doesn't tend to do as well, right? The teams kind of pick up on more. And with him, he's not a guy who's going to be a threat on the ground. So if you he stays in the pocket, he's going to stay in the pocket, right?
We saw Purdy on the opposite side fucking run.
I've never seen him run like that, dude. I've never seen Purdy run like that.
I haven't seen many quarterbacks run in that style, but it was perfect. Like, I'm giving him credit on those runs because some big guys.
Some big runs, man. He had some big runs, dude.
Tackle him that he kind of dodged weren't like some like random, dudes that are coming at you. They're guys that when they hit you, they're gonna fucking blow your head off.
I was impressed by those runs. They said that they showed his speed after. It was the fastest he'd ever ran, too, man. I mean, huh?
What was this like?
I think it was something like 20. I gotta look. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but they're like
the fastest this year was Metcalf.
At like 24,
something like that. He got the fastest one, so I want to see what his Purdy.
I don't know, like he was like pretty fast, man.
He would start really slow in his runs, Purdy, but then all of a sudden when he caught wind, he was like gone.
Let's see if I can find it. I'll see if I can find it for you. What was the other line? 4 for 53. Damn. So 4 for 53 for him is pretty damn quick.
Dude, that's half a football field just by your quarterback from running. That's pretty damn good.
And so the part that really makes it interesting now for the 49ers is was this like a one-off with Purdy, or is this some part of the game that they've been, because they try to go for Trey Lance, who was a running style, because that was the big thing, was running QBs. But if Purdy can run like this on a regular basis, I mean, the runs that he had, he might not do again. Yeah. But if he could become more of like, kind of like a Russell Wilson, with the way that like the runs aren't designed for him to run, but if he sees a gap and he can turn a sack into a 5-yard gain, or he runs for the 8-9 yards and turns it into a second and short, if he can just add that element to the 49ers offense, I don't see how the Chiefs stop them next week, because that's the one component that the 49ers haven't fully had in their offense. So we'll talk about that after, when we, talk a little bit more about the Super Bowl next week even, right? That'll be our big Super Bowl conversation at that point. But, man, Lions had it. They blew it. 49ers came back. They made the right plays. They had the crowd on their side, and they got the job done at the end of it. Purdy stepped up. You can say he's a game manager. Okay, maybe he is. But you know what? Game managers have won a Super Bowl before, so it's not like, Russell Wilson, we had the best defense in the entire league of all time. Yeah. What's his face back with the Ravens too? That quarterback when they had the best defense? Flacco ripped it up. Flacco, I give him props for. Oh man, I can't think of the guy. He wanted like 20, like when they had the Ray Lewis. I forget. Who the fuck it? Oh, we always see him on TV and shit, dude. Trent Dilfer? That sounds right, I think. He's the guy who ended up.
Did they even show him?
Yeah, it was Trent Dilfer, man. Way back in the day.
Did they even show him? Because remember how they were showing all the Baltimore Ravens that won at the game? Like they had.
No, they didn't. No, but he wasn't like on that level.
Ray Lewis was.
Yeah. No way. This guy's the game manager of Ray Lewis. I didn't even bring in Ray Rice before this guy. And he didn't even win a Super Bowl. All right, that was a little dark. I'm sorry. But he honestly can probably, out of that Super Bowl winning run, he probably had the lead. Like, he was a game manager. They had the number one defense of all time. They literally needed this guy to put up like 10, 13 points, right?
Top defense, you only need a game manager on the offensive side as a quarterback. You just need him to low amount of turnovers. And that's one thing I said about Goff too. I was like, you know what? Hopefully he has his early turnover and no more in the.
He didn't turn it over, I think, right?
His,
did he?
Early on.
Which turnover did he have?
Remember the pick? That pick was his first one.
Oh,
But then
right.
after that, he had something else. Remember, wasn't it an end zone pick?
I don't know if it was.
They just put their knee down and got it out of the end zone.
Uh,
So he did something in the
that
second.
happened in the other game. That game was the Chiefs and the Ravens. But yeah, I don't know. Can't remember that play, man. To be honest, I honestly can't remember that play.
Oh, maybe but that one was.
I don't think he had a pretty. I don't even know if he had a turnover. To be honest, I don't think he did, man. He had like one TD and he had no turnovers, but there was just a couple throws he got let down. I mean, they got the touchdown, I think, at the end too, but it was too little, too late.
Yeah.
They lost by 3 points. Those field goals were huge. Right, even if it, or even tied it, you're going to overtime, and then it's like then you blew a 17
Back at 0-0 once you're in OT.
over. You never know what's gonna happen, and then with the playoff rules now, both team gets at least one shot, right? So no matter what'll happen, one team would have had the shot. So
Except for TD, right?
no, TD still gives you a shot. Yep, the only playoffs. So that was they changed it. It was because the Bills, I think, I've rolled out. It happened against the Mahomes guys too. Remember when Brady ended up winning in overtime? But it's only if you score a TD you get an opportunity back. If you get a field goal, I mean, obviously field goal does it.
It does it anyway.
But before they wouldn't have like all those rules. So now a TD gives you a second chance. But the thing is, if you're a team going to overtime now, you're better off being the second team, not the first. Because if you're the first team, you get field goal, touchdown. But if you're second, you know exactly what you need to do.
Yeah.
You don't have, if you got to get a field goal or you touchdown, your play calling changes too. Or if you, obviously, to win the game or tie the game or whatever it may be, the second team has a better strategy. But, let's go on to the Chiefs and Ravens. I don't know. Who do you want to go with? Lamar, Mahomes?
Not much, honestly, to talk about Mahomes. He just does what
he does, right?
But Lamar, on the other hand, we were hoping he was going to do a lot more. And I think, OBJ said it best when they have that candid kind of audio of him.
Yeah.
That, yo, you can do this shit with your legs, literally. What the fuck is going on? Like, everybody, I think, at one point was asking that, like, what the fuck is going on? We're seeing the play live. We're seeing everybody spread out. The field is wide open. Why are you not, why aren't you running? Like, where's the Lamar that we know? That we're not looking for a 40-yard touchdown every single time, but we are looking for, how you said, Brock Purdy, get the 5 yards instead of a sack, which we saw him get sacked and get pushed out of field goal territory so many times. Like, dude, you have to fucking run.
So, I know Lamar didn't do very good.
Yeah.
But this is the time to mention that McDonald only allowed Mahomes to score 17 points. Yeah. And Spagnuolo, who's been shutting down defense, he went from a guy who was a liability for the Chiefs defensive coordinator at one point to now becoming one of the great defensive coordinators, what he's been doing. Yeah. So before we get into the rest of the conversation, I think both of those defensive coaches deserve props for what happened in front of them. Yeah. But going back to Lamar, his deep ball is not he threw a nice one to Flowers. Yeah. We'll talk about Flowers too, man. Flowers also didn't help him either, right? So
he definitely took some points.
They probably would have had, because that would have been counted as a touchdown throw for Lamar too if he made the touchdown, right? So 17 points, 10 points, but LeBron, the Zay Flowers thing was all Zay. He threw a nice ball. Beautiful. He fucked up and then dude, we talked about it right then and there. He pushes the guy, celebrates on him, and then spins the football over his head. You pushed the guy that probably would have let it go. You stand over the guy and talk a shit. They probably would have let it go, but there might have been a penalty when you roll the ball right on the top of the guy's head. Yeah. They have you've been standing there for a good 10 seconds, man. Everyone's looking at you, right?
You had to do it quickly. You flex or whatever the guys do, and then you walk off. And while you're walking off, you say your shit. You don't say it to the guy so that the cameras can see you. Yeah. I don't want to walk by, look back, maybe say something while you're walking off.
And your celebration, the taunting, everything, right? So that puts him from a 1st and goal to 1st and 25. Yeah. And then they get it back. He gets the penalty. He comes back. He makes some sick catch. He got him a 1st down again on that play too. Yeah. And then Snead, man, came in at the perfect time, knocked it out, right? The thing that coaches have been telling you is when you get to the goal line, don't reach out unless you're clear. You tuck the ball in and you go hard. If you get stopped short, because they would have had the first down, you're still okay, right? You don't look at
like the 2 yard line.
and look at what happened last week against with what's his face Hardman. Remember, he got it knocked out at the same thing. He tried to go over and got it knocked out. So stop trying to reach over. And I think that's the part of being like a rookie, that sometimes you're gonna make these dumb mistakes, right? So
In
that
college, you would have done that hands down every single.
he would have done it, and he had so much success all year that you didn't really think about it. But when you come to the playoffs, balls turnovers is huge in the playoffs. The amount of games that teams win or lose in the playoffs, I get the regular season matters, playoffs it matter even more, right? Bad turnover, bad penalty, so that didn't help Lamar's case at all, right? And his running, I think he was like 6 for 54. He didn't go pop off, but that's part of the good game plan that they had too. They also were, what Flowers is big, but they had help. They made the throws in front of him. And I think they just did a good job of not playing to Lamar's strength. Lamar loves doing the middle of the field.
Yeah.
Right? Those 1, 2, 3, you can throw it quick. It's easier to throw in the middle of the field too. It's also where you get the best chance of getting chunk plays. If you can get in the middle constantly, you get 10, 15, 20 yards, right? They made him throw it a little deeper at times. That pick, though, was fucking triple coverage.
Yeah.
And I get that, on the other side, Isaiah likely did get hit. But if there wasn't 3 dudes already, there's no way the ball's making it through. Yeah. Even if he didn't hit him, there's no way the ball's making it through 3 dudes.
No, and that's the other part of it. I think KC did a really good job is shutting down the tight ends. They did not let Andrews and Likely get away with plays. At one point, remember when Lamar did that pass to himself?
Yeah.
He had the second most yards behind Flowers, I think it was, for the team at that point.
Flowers. I think that was in the third quarter, too. Yeah. That wasn't like the first quarter. That was the third quarter, man.
Shows you, they had the tight ends covered. All the other receivers were covered. And it was just Flowers that was, A, getting away with shit, and then B, he was also the one fucking shit up, too. So you have a receiver that's kind of almost evening himself out. He's canceling out all his yardage from the penalty, from that loss. So it's realistically, the best receiver they had was almost Lamar.
And where was OBJ all game, man? Other than the candid audio, he made a catch or 2 at the end, I think. But
used him
he was
advantages.
It was such a weird kind of game plan too, because Bunkin has been killing it all year, right? They made adjustments looking against the Texans. They've done really well, but they barely even used the running backs this game too. Barely. And I think the running backs had maybe 5. There wasn't a lot of carries at all. It was just throw all day.
It was all throwing. Hill. I saw Hill's name pop up a few times, and then
Edwards did well on his limited runs, though.
And he's the guy that's usually you give him the ball to run.
Yep.
And Justice Hill's there to do your catching. He'll do your whatever. If Gus Edwards needs a breather, he'll still run. It's not like Hill can't do any runs, but you have to scare them with your run. And that's how KC. That's the only way to beat KC, because if you're leaving Snead guys and all these guys into coverage, those guys are fucking dominant as hell in coverage.
And the other thing is, when you make it, when you are in an obvious passing situation, it's harder against the Chiefs. When you can make it 2nd and 5 on Spags defense, they can't be as funky because it's a 2nd and 5. The offense dictates now, right? But you're on a 2nd and 7, 2nd and 8, 2nd and 10 because you had an incompletion on the first play. You're not getting anything out of the run game. Not saying that you have to run the ball first every time, pound it 40 times a game, but first down you throw it, second down maybe you run it now, right? They didn't do any of that to what they've been doing. They're all the way up to this point, right?
That fucks up your play action.
Yep.
Now that nobody's running, they already think that you're faking the play action, and we know Lamar loves doing those fakes anyway. So the KC defensive guy, and having fucking people forget that Jones is there too.
Yep.
Who's one of the most disruptive motherfuckers at the line.
He's not an Aaron Donald.
No.
But I mean, you could say he's maybe the 2nd best defensive tackle in the league.
Dude, he's scary.
Right? He's done it in the playoffs. He does it in the regular season.
He grabbed Lamar a few times, even the ones that he got the ball away.
Yep.
I think he had 1 sack on.
I think he did. Lamar had guys sliming off of him too a couple times, right? Still ended up doing all these crazy plays, but 10 points, man, turnovers. Because he threw more than, did he just throw 1 pick, or was it more than 1 pick? Lamar. I think Lamar had multiple picks too, man.
He might have had multiple. One was that end zone one.
Remember even the guy Likely put his hand up too?
Yeah, he told him, he's like, yo, like bomb it. Even though he had
Dude,
guys
he
on
had a
his
guy
side.
in front of him. He didn't see the guy on the other side, and he obviously wasn't paying attention behind
He
him.
was not.
That was hilarious. Lamar had remember the sack fumble.
Oh yeah.
Remember when he went to cock back it, and on that play they showed everybody in front. Out of all the defensive linemen, that was the only time where all the defensive backs had their back turned to
they
him.
were all
If he ran it at that time, he would have gone for 20 plus yards easy.
I remember seeing that one too. This one turned into a sack fumble. Like what?
And I'm like, what? How? This is the time when Lamar always runs, right? So I think that was part of the going back to Spags with his defense. He confused Lamar in a lot of situations, right? And that's one of the things a lot of these defenses, including Mike McDonald's really good at too, is they don't show you the defense what it's gonna be. You kind of have to guess. If a QB knows the exact if you're playing cover 2, cover 1, coming for a blitz, then and you know which play to call. You're gonna call a slant, you can call like a screen, you can do it deep. You know what play you're gonna call. But when you don't know what it's gonna be, you think it's a zone, they blitz out of the zone. You think it's gonna be man, it pops into zone. You think it's gonna be a blitz, it's a zone there as well, right? Like
That's from doing all that. Like you saw, both quarterbacks were frustrated.
yeah.
The game, both guys were just like not able to hit their guys. Obviously, early on, KC had like a really dominant showing, but then in the second half, when
They didn't score any points.
they didn't score shit, and you could tell from like Lamar really shows his emotions because he'll like get frustrated, slam his shit. Whereas Mahomes hides it a bit, but then you saw Mahomes kind of going out of like character, kind of getting mad, angry. You could see the yelling, like the way he was on the sideline. You're like, yo, like defensively, these defensive coaches are both putting so much pressure on these quarterbacks that right now it's like it's a turnover game. And that's how it became. Like whoever's going to get the turnovers is probably going to win this game because without turnovers, it's going to be a really close game.
Has Mahomes had a turnover at all himself?
Oh.
I mean, I felt like he hasn't had anything.
He hasn't really fucked around much himself.
Because let's go back and take a look. He had no picks. He had no turnovers. I think that's all the games they haven't had a single turnover. And that's what you said.
That's how you
They had 2 turnovers for Baltimore, right? And there were big ones too. One was right there. But then they kind of stopped. Like, I think that was the one where, no, that was the previous week they had the other shit go down. But 2 turnovers, 0 turnovers, you win by 7. The pick in one area, and then Flowers. Does the Flowers count as a turnover too? Because he fumbled it. That's a fumble. Yeah, it was a turnover. That's a third turnover.
Then it goes over.
Right? So fumble in the 1-yard line.
Yeah.
They're like inches away from the goal line. The Lamar fumble when they were in their own, I think, 30. Yep. And then the pick late when they had a chance in scoring range again.
Yeah, that was in San
And that
KC zone. But
yeah. But
still,
and then the Flowers penalty after they got the first down after the play.
Yeah.
So those 4 huge mistakes, you can literally if you look at the Chiefs side, there wasn't really anything. Even the second half when they couldn't score, they weren't making turnover. They were punting the ball if they had to.
They were being aggressive on hey, it's a 4th and 3. We're gonna go for it. Like just punt it, get it the fuck out of here, and let's see what our defense can do. And they trust their defense. Man.
They're the second best by overall. The breakdown is the second best defense for the Chiefs. I think it's the 7th or 9th best defense for the 49ers. And statistically, when it comes to the Super Bowl, if whoever has the best defense out of the remaining teams wins.
Yeah.
Most of the time. Maybe not. And that's not just necessarily in the regular. That's the defense in the playoffs too, right?
Yeah, that's true.
We'll see what happens. We'll talk about more of it. Anything? Oh yeah, the coaching hires. That's a big topic here too, right? Just one more point. Kelsey ripped it up. Yeah. 10 catches, 116 yards, a TD, and that one sick catch where Mahomes throws it. Yeah. Gets hit in the knee. Kelsey dives, gets the first down, and gets the catch. He turned back the clock, man.
Props actually turning the clock back on Mahomes. Because when the video started coming out of his training, of him training into weird positions, which I don't think we ever see.
Derrick Henry.
Yeah, we see him doing it, but he's doing really heavy weight, whereas this guy's doing.
Okay.
This guy's doing more of deep stretches, putting your body into weird contoured things that circus people do.
Mm-hmm.
That one that one's really hard to do. The backward one where you're like a spider almost.
Yeah.
And your legs are on the ground, but your hands.
That one was weird.
And
Oh.
they put that next to the replay of the one where the guy got him on the knees, and the way he fell was the exact way.
Yeah. Damn.
Doing like he's fucking flexible. That's why he got out of that position. He didn't get anything rolled up. A normal person that's not as flexible would have probably ended up fucking.
And the fact that he's got that in his like training regimen to already do things like that, But I mean, you have to be able to stay healthy. Like even last year, injuries. He's had injuries in the past, but for the most of his career, he's been a guy who's been able to. He hasn't really missed multiple weeks. It's usually a game here or a game there.
Like that's why I think he's doing these workouts. It's mostly his legs.
It's kind of like Seth Curry.
Guys that fucking come and tackle him low. So you
Yes,
have to be
yes.
prepared for those guys. So you have to know the guys are gonna come tackle you because they're trying to get you out of the game too, right? Like they're kind of like trying to get in your head, like, hey, I fucking hit you one, like Max Crosby always does to him.
Yeah, but I mean, it kind of gives you like Seth Curry vibes, where you know, like the difference between a healthy version of this guy and a non-healthy version is like one of the is a goat to just a mortal man. Yeah. Right? Like Seth Curry, they got the with his injuries, right? They thought he was just gonna be a good player.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, boom, he gets healthy, everything clicks, and boom, go. So I'm glad that Mahomes is healthy, because it would have been shitty to see a matchup between one guy with a torn ACL or some shit. Right? The Chiefs got some injuries, though. They lost a couple guys on defense that game, too. So I'm interested to see how that works out next week. But going back to the coaching hires, we'll just do a quick recap here. Redskins win with Dan Quinn. Seahawks won with Mike McDonald. Panthers win with Dave Canales. Falcons win with Raheem Morris. Patriots win with Jared Mayo. Raiders win with Antonio Pierce. Chargers win with Harbaugh. And Titans win with Callahan. So, obviously, other than the Seahawks, which you can't cheer for because you're obviously biased, name your favorite hire and your non-favorite hire.
I'm going to say Harbaugh, probably my favorite hire.
Yep.
Just because of, like, seeing him in the NFC West previously, how good he did there. He was like one of our big rivals that just everybody looked up to. Like, that's a team we want to fucking be. And then goes to college, runs shit there, and now comes back to the NFL to see if he still has it. And
yeah.
Dope for him. You know, his brother is fucking still there.
Right.
So it's going to be like a dope kind of, I think it would have been dope. Like if
they're in the same conference, though.
Yeah.
They're at least, so they have a chance to play each other, right?
So it'll be kind of cool to see that. And then worst one, I don't know. I'm going to have to go with the Dan Quinn one.
Fair.
Just because, like, yeah, he's a defensive guru. I'll give it to him on that all day.
Right.
Nobody could fuck. Not many people can fuck with his defense. But I think as a head coach, having to take on more responsibility, especially the offensive side, because there could be, you know, you could have fights with your coordinator in the season. You can take the play calling, whatever can happen. We've seen him there before, and it hasn't been that great for him. So I think those are my two.
So, I mean, for me, I think Harbaugh is an easy one for me, and you picked him because you couldn't pick Mike McDonald. I'm going to go with Mike McDonald, even though I obviously, you know, my hatred for the Seahawks, right? But it seems like a smart hire, man. He's a positive guy. He's done wonders with the defense, right? There's nothing in his, like, hopefully he's not like a, you know, the Dave Staley or whatever, the guy that just got fired by the Chargers, kind of up and coming, young, whatever. But you know what? Like, just because you don't have experience doesn't mean you're not going to do well. You could also be McVay and all these other guys, right? But at least from like a fit perspective of the way that Schneider has, you know, like kind of coaches, I guess it's just been Pete Carroll, but they kind of wanted a positive guy still in there. Their defense has been neglected for so many years now that I understand it's not like defense wins you championships, but defense can cost you championship, right? So you can be an average. You got to be like almost average on defense. You don't have to be the best defense or the you know, top 10, but you better be like average defense. And then sometimes with average defense in the playoffs just kind of click and they become a little bit better, like the Chiefs did last year.
Because you only have so many opponents left in the postseason. They're not worried about the entire league now. You're just like, yo, this is who's in front of us. This is all we got to get through.
And you can sometimes there's one game plans and you don't know, like, you know, teams do really well, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I think that was hire was like a home run. The one that I would say that I'm kind of my least favorite hire is Dave Canales. First of all, I had no idea this guy was even in contention. Like, no offense, he did lead the Bucs offense, which wasn't like phenomenal. Like, it was good. I know he did as well with Baker, but I also don't trust the kind of like the whole organization of the Panthers right now to be like, we trust what you guys are doing. Because they've gone through, Frank Reich. They had an interim coach they probably should have kept. They decided to let him go. Who was he who did they fire before him?
The guy that was with Cam Newton guys earlier.
Oh, fuck.
What the hell
Tabor.
is his
No. That was this.
Isn't he coaching?
It wasn't Rivera. Rivera was before that. Rivera's been
That's who I'm actually thinking of.
No, they had another guy in between too. So I can't think of the guy's name right now. But I think he's gone through like 3 coaches in 3 years at this point. He's paying all these other dudes. You've seen him throw drinks at fans and shit like that, right? So there's nothing in me that believe, and obviously that organization picked fucking Young over Stroud, right? So there's nothing in me that believes that the Panthers did the right thing.
Yeah.
And they have to be wrong, right? Like Harbaugh's a proven winner. Quinn has won before. The fact that the Commanders have a new organization and an owner who seems to be doing like good things. They hired the right-hand man of Lynch, who's, as you know, a rival of the 49ers, all the great players they've drafted in the last few years, right? So I think it's a really, I think though that hire by the Panthers, I just don't trust it. Maybe I'll be wrong, right? I just don't trust it until you prove me wrong.
And also why they went for him.
Yep.
Just because you do have Bryce Young, up and coming quarterback. We've seen Canales and what he's done with quarterbacks. They looked at purely at one asset, that he can come in and change our quarterback, and that might ignite our offense. They're not really thinking about the rest of you still got to have
defense,
which you can kind of help him with getting a very good defensive coordinator.
You can, yeah.
So there's things you can help him with, but it seems like they just went, we have Bryce Young. We put this effort into him. We kind of have him now for the next whatever years. And we lost our picks, so let's get a guy right now that's going to be purely more of a quarterback guy.
Yeah.
Really get into him, figure out the offense, and bring whatever offensive.
They're bringing the wide receivers coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers too. That's I think going to be his offensive coordinator. And obviously, Godwin, Evans, right? Even the Gage guy, they've had other guys that have done really well too, right? They
Evans himself puts a good resume on him.
He's a Hall of Famer, bro.
He's 1,000+ yards a fucking year.
So, for those kind of guys, you're almost like, you know what? That part I did like that they got the wide receivers coach who's coached so well in Tampa Bay all these years.
And that relationship still with
he's very
that part's good.
But there's others like we just saw today, Kingsbury's the Raiders offensive coordinator now. And watching him, what he was doing in Arizona, he's completely neglected a run game that had Murray there as well. Too much offense. I mean,
I like him more in the OC role than the head coach role.
Which is fair. I think
I like that OC style for him, not the fucking head coach.
No.
Too much on his plate, I think.
He's definitely not a head coach. But, I mean, it's just he left in such a bad... usually sometimes offensive coordinators get fired because there's a new coach.
Yeah.
But when you get him from one position to another, maybe he learned some lessons and he's going to be better this time around. Well, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens with Raiders, because last time they had a interim coach that do well, they let him go after they made the playoffs, and they haven't done. Then they brought in, I think, Gruden, right? And then his shit happened, and then they brought in. No, was it Gruden or was it?
Who did they just
McDaniels. McDaniels, right? He was the interim coach for Gruden.
Yeah.
They brought in McDaniels.
Last done. Now they kept this guy.
Now look at the situation, right? So, I mean, no one's really talking about the Titans and Brian Callahan, right? Other than, the one point I was going to make, Bill Belichick and Mike Vrabel without jobs this year.
Yeah,
the greatest and same, Pete Carroll doesn't have a job either this year, right? So,
Vrabel, he's still young, but the other two I can kind of, I can see Belichick taking a break from football and maybe thinking about coming back, or in retirement, he's kind of like, fuck it.
Both.
Carroll, same thing. He might be like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to take some time off. Vrabel, though, that was a head scratcher of how, nobody's going for him. And now he's at a position that the only thing he can get into now would be an OC role.
And I think he's too good to be an OC.
Yeah, he is.
And so being a guy, especially he grew up on the defensive side of the ball, right?
Yeah.
And look at his previous look at his last two offensive coordinators other than Matt LaFleur, then Arthur Smith, right? No, LaFleur killed it. Arthur Smith killed it as offensive coordinator, did terrible as a coach. And then, his offense, like the whole trade with A.J. Brown, I think was a huge, but that might have been more on the, last year they should fire the GM with like 6 games left in the season. Yeah. Weird time to fire him too. So I think the thing with Vrabel, though, is that he's one of those guys where taking a year off for him isn't going to impact him because he's, like you said, he's so young.
Yeah.
And for him, I think, you know what? I thought the Seahawks were going to go after him. He seemed like right? I thought he was a good candidate for that team, but next year there's going to be like, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but Mike Vrabel's taking the Titans further than McCarthy ever took Cowboys, right? Like those guys are all in on there too. They lost their defensive coordinator, right? So that's going to be another adjustment as well. So I think whatever happens, there's going to be other coaching opportunities come Vrabel next year. I mean, I could honestly even see him becoming a college coach, right? He's got that the Ohio State connection too, because I think that's where he was before he became into the NFL too, is with Ohio State. So
a lot of money in college now too.
No, a lot of money in college, man. A lot of, and Vrabel, he's got he's been to the AFC Championship game. Right? Not a lot of coaches end up doing there, and most of the coaches are pretty decent coaches. Yeah. So I think he's going to go somewhere next year. I don't know where, when, how. The Falcons one was really interesting because the part that I was going to mention is now your Rams get 2 more draft picks because they hired a diversity hire. But Raheem Morris, right? Like he didn't do so well the first time. Yeah. He did really well in LA. Maybe he's learned the first time and coaching with McVay and stuff too, right? He did really well with that defense, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's one of those guys. Just obviously, they're not all going to do well. Raiders are, kept Antonio Price. Patriots kind of had an agreement last year with Jared Mayo that he's going to be their coach. It was written into his contract right? So that wasn't unexpected. Obviously, the Chargers and Harbaugh. Dan Quinn to the Redskins is a little interesting because I thought that might have been another Mike Vrabel spot. Right, over Quinn, who I kind of trust Vrabel more than I trust Dan Quinn, right? Especially after that defensive performance. But then again, Vrabel had like a 5-11 year or some shit too. So, we'll see.
A shitty team too. Like they've been riding fucking who's the other quarterback?
Tannehill, right?
Like far as they could.
But he also turned Tannehill's career around too, right? So
100%.
It's kind of like which way do you go with things? So I think Vrabel's going to get a job. I don't know about Bill Belichick because I think wherever he goes, it has to be a very unique and fit for him too, right? And would he be willing to go to an organization where he doesn't have the full power like he did when he was with the Patriots, right? And B doesn't even need to coach again. You're probably considered, I think he is considered the greatest coach of all time, right? So his legacy kind of took a hit with Brady getting the title and them not doing well the last few years, but he doesn't need to coach. Pete Carroll's an interesting guy, but same thing. Like he's got the Super Bowl, he's got a college title with an asterisk. Sorry, Reggie Bush, right? He's 72. Right? Like how long he's gonna coach until he's 80? Right? Like I don't.
The heart attack running along the sideline. They're like, "Yo, it's finally over."
Like, are the Chiefs? I mean, the Seahawks gonna bring him back as a QB or something and have him fight Geno for the spot, right? So,
he needs to retire.
I think like he doesn't have to coach, but you know what? If some team look at Sean Payton, the amount of money that they threw at him to come back. If some teams like, hey, we're gonna give you 15, 20 million a year for 3 years or 4 years, right? Or even let's say Pete wants to do it for 5 years, 77. Still ridiculous to think about, but
especially when these guys take time off and you see how much you want to come back. That next year, if somebody does give you the hanging offer and it's a good one, like a lot of these guys bite because they're like, you're fiending for it. You're watching the season, you're like, I could do this, I could do that, and then you want to kind of come back.
But even with Carroll, could you see him being an announcer role or? At those look at Bill Cowher after he left the Steelers, right? He ended up going there too. So
I see him going into how he kind of is an executive role, still having a role with football.
Yeah.
If he doesn't go a coaching way, if he doesn't choose anything coaching related, I think he just sticks with the Seahawks, gets a role in there, helps with scouting, kind of little random shit just to stay with football.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these guys, like he doesn't seem like a guy that just wants to retire and say like.
I think that's what I say is, but his advisory role is very interesting because I think they didn't want to come out and be like, we fired him, right? But at the same time, he even said it like it wasn't his decision all the way. Like the owner had a huge part in making that decision. I'm not saying it's the wrong decision, but the way that it explained, it wasn't like it was a mutual decision. I think it was more on the ownership side, right? But he'll be 73 next year. I don't know, like, no offense to him, the coaching hires that he's made over the last several years haven't done that great. The guys that have left Quinn was good, but he wasn't a good coach. You know, the Sherman, I think he was a defensive coordinator was he for the Seahawks as well and the Cowboys? Or what was the other guy that you guys had as one of you? It was like Sherman, not Sherman. It was another guy. He was your secondary coach.
Sean Desai?
No, it wasn't Desai. It was the oh man.
The other black guy.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? It wasn't no, not him. Man, he was like the coaching. Oh man, I can't think of the guy. I think he took over after Dan Quinn, right? And then they fired him, and then they brought in that Clint guy. Defensive coordinator history. Chris Richard. That's who I was thinking of. Chris Richard. That's the guy. But I mean, because they since then they've had a couple different coordinators, and they haven't really done well in the last few years. So that was kind of the peak. That looked good. They had Gus Bradley for a bit. Then they went into Dan Quinn, was their prime when they won everything. And then from Chris Richard to he was a few years, and then I think Clint, and their defense hasn't been the same. So you know what, it makes sense from that side. But I think we're pretty much exhausted our NFL talk for quite some time here. Next week we'll be back with more of a Super Bowl breakdown. We might bring in some draft topics at this point too, right? And yeah, that's pretty much it. So, all right, we'll be back right after this with the NBA portion of the Sunny D podcast.